Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Hatch 5.0 Accelerator presentation and webinar. We were looking at, how we can promote and reach out to startup applicants from pretty much all around the world to join this program. And we've been talking about the details of the program a couple of weeks ago in a previous webinar about the benefits of the program, how it works, and the plans and that we have for the 3.5 months kicking off on the 26th of June. But when looking at how we can interact with those who are interested in applying and getting to know more about what the program is all about, I think there's no better people to hear from for those interested in applying or joining the program than those who've already been through it. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce three CEOs of companies that have joined our program previously. Interestingly, there are over 3 different programs. This will be number 5 coming up in June. Suzan Shahrestani, CEO of Minnowtech, joined our program back in Ireland in 2018. Heidi Kuehnle from Kuehnle AgroSystems joined our program in Hawaii in 2019. And Jason, in the middle of COVID, it doesn't stop. Business joined our remote program or a hybrid program back in 2020. So each of our teams have joined the program at different stages, and I'm going to hopefully develop an interesting conversation for you all, an informative conversation for you all, and to stimulate some questions from the audience too, wherever you like. So maybe I'll kick it off. I'm one of the co-founders of Hatch. My background was never in aquaculture. It was all in the startup community and developing companies. But in the last 5 years, we've managed to work with over 150 aquaculture and ocean related startups around the world. We've invested in 38 of them. And we're looking in this next iteration in the Hatch Accelerator 5.0 to find 10 more companies that we are looking to invest in and help and support. But we'll get straight into the stars of the show, really. Maybe ladies first. Suzan, if you might give yourself an introduction to you, your team, where you are today, and a little bit about what Minnowtech is up to.
Sure. Thanks, Wayne. So I'm Suzan Shahrestani, CEO of Minnowtech. I've been working on the shrimp biomass problem since we joined the Accelerator back in 2018. I'm currently in Guayaquil, Ecuador, where they're the #1 exporters of shrimp in the world. So I'm close to the action and happy to be here today.
Great, Suzan. Thank you. Jason, another part.
I thought ladies first.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Heidi. Go ahead.
Greetings, everyone. Aloha. My name is Heidi Kuehnle. I'm CTO and co-founder of Kuehnle AgroSystems based here on the island of Oahu. Our company develops microalgae-based solutions to help with global issues in human health, animal feed, and human dietary, so human food.
Okay, great, Heidi. Thank you. And Jason, in another part of the world.
Yeah, so I'm joining from Norway today. Relocated for 3 months with my family, but we can get into that later. We're a Canadian-based startup. I'm the CEO of the company, and we're building AI to monitor harmful algal blooms and helping farmers better manage their stock.
Okay, they've had many years of practice in terms of pitching their company. So there's the start, and maybe kicking off with you, Heidi, in terms of, we ran a program in 2019 in Hawaii. Your company has been in operation for quite a number of years, right? And you've had so many different iterations and challenges. But really what I want to get to the crux of is, when you joined or decided to join the Accelerator in 2019, what attracted you to do that? But also, when you're going through the process, looking back now, how did it change you, if at all, your team, your approach, and get you to where you are today, and just the general experience of those 3 months across 3 continents?
Yeah, well, I can say right off the bat is the best thing our company ever did. So if you do have the chance to be in a Hatch Accelerator program, absolutely take advantage of that opportunity. For us, I was just a little bit more about the background to put it into context. So I was a university professor using my consulting time to start the company. And we started the company based on innovations we were doing on my outside of the university, but we started getting a lot of contracts and grants into the company. So I left my tenured position and my paycheck basically to devote myself to our startup company. The startup company was doing very well under these contracts and grants, but for us to really accelerate where we wanted to go, we needed to understand better how to get the proper financing to do that. When we were accepted into the Accelerator program in 2019, our starting point was that we already had a novel technology under development and we had filed patents on it. And then when we were interviewed by Hatch, that was probably one of the best interviews we ever had, because I realized right away all our deficiencies, and that we needed that accelerator program to really to take advantage of what they could offer, which is really tapping into their huge network of the farmers, so the customers, the industry leaders, the community organizations that we should be aware of and interact with, and then of course the investors. And for us out here in the middle of the Pacific, it was really helpful to have someone who already had that network established, and to tap into that. And it literally is an accelerator, because as soon as you're meeting with the person who's going to purchase your stuff in a Cargill, let's say, I mean, that's acceleration to get into market. So it was just brilliant timing for us, and telling us very not gently, just telling us what we needed to do in a way that made, as a scientist, you want it to be logical. It was very logical. And they said, not only do you need to do this, but this is how we can help you. And so Hatch really just positioned us very quickly to the company that we had envisioned, and really didn't know how to take that next step to that.
Okay, great. And Suzanne, same thing to you. Kind of yours was a different start, right? Very different to Heidi's. Yep. Maybe a little bit of background about how Minnowtech kicked off, and how you joined the program and what happened to you from there.
Sure. Yeah. Heidi mentioned that they had their innovation. Minnowtech did not have their innovation. We had a solution where we were using acoustic-based cameras to understand what was going on underneath the water. And it really wasn't until we met Hatch and George and Karsten and Wayne from Hatch that introduced us to a major problem in the aquaculture industry. And we learned about that problem through the Hatch Accelerator. And we're actually developing our first prototype when we were in the accelerator. So we were being exposed to, everybody under the sun that was important in aquaculture. I was transitioning from being a scientist. I was a fourth year PhD, didn't really understand what entrepreneurship meant, but knew that I had a passion to take what I had learned through my graduate experience and then now apply it to industry. And Hatch was really the bridge to that, introducing me to customers. They facilitated putting our first prototype on a farm in Medan, Indonesia. Of course, it didn't work, as the usual ugly babies, as Wayne called my first prototype, doesn't. But it was that trial and error, that understanding that we were not doing this to satisfy our curiosity or to publish anymore. We were actually doing it to solve a real world problem that farmers were having. And I think for me, the biggest thing was that I was beginning to understand the farmer's true pain point. And that became integral to everything we do at Minnowtech now. And so that's really been a tremendous experience. We also met our manufacturing partners when we were in the accelerator with Hatch, met different investors. So I would agree with what Heidi said. It truly changed the course of the company and positioned us to be successful. And we continue to move in that direction today. And I'm always talking to the Hatch crew and leaning on them support, years later.
Thanks, Suzanne. And again, a very different kind of start and for you, Jason. And interestingly, both you and Suzanne, prior to the program, had no aquaculture background at all, right? And so you started from scratch in terms of having an idea that may have an application for the space. And maybe you can talk about your experience before the program, figuring it out, is this for you, between you and Katie, and
Mhm.
also please that kind of online virtual element to it in terms of that experience.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and this might relate to some on the call, but I'm trained as an engineer. I specialize in computer vision and machine learning, and I ended up doing a master's and PhD. During my PhD, I essentially learned the problem of harmful algal blooms, and I'm from Canada. Did my PhD in Ontario, right where the Great Lakes are, and essentially developed this cool camera technology that works with the microscope to identify all these organisms in water, and then had a co-founder join, Katie. She has a PhD in aquatic ecology. So her and I essentially formed the DNA of the business. And we knew that this was a problem, harmful algal blooms, but we didn't know where there was a strong willingness to pay. So we did a bit of a market analysis, and we learned of aquaculture. And at that time, I didn't know anything about aquaculture, like Wayne said. So we applied to the Hatch program with this prototype microscope AI system, and looking for where's the biggest pain points in the market. And yeah, Hatch took us under their wings, and it really moved things along quickly. We, like Wayne said, we were completely virtual in 2020. Still a tremendous amount of value add to us, introductions into the market, mentoring, understanding the pain points in the market. By the end of the program, we had essentially connected with what is now a distributor of our technology to the salmon markets. They're a Scottish company called OTAC. And so without Hatch, that introduction would have never happened. That partnership would have never formed. We got strategic funding from them as well. And so that really set the stage for us entering into the aquaculture markets. It is really valuable.
Okay, no, thank you, Jason. And I think just for the audience listening in, please feel free to type in any questions that you might have throughout, and we'll look to save some time at the very end to answer those questions. But the mindset of the people listening in, I want to kind of get to that stage before the program started in your individual programs. What were you thinking about what the program would do in terms of the expectations, and that versus what turned out to be the case? Just so that the guys listening can get a sense of, right, this is what I want to do, this is what I expect to happen. And is that always the case in terms of your experience? Maybe if you could kick that off, Suzan.
Yeah, I would say that my expectations for the program were completely blown out of the water. I don't know that I actually knew what was going to happen. I knew that I would be leaving my home for 3 months and be traveling with like-minded people. I anticipated that we would all have a similar passion for the environment, that we were all there hoping to make a difference in whatever industry we were going to be immersed in. That was all true, but the level to which it was actually happening was pretty incredible. To be in that situation, in a room with people that are all, focused on the same thing you are. Maybe they had different motivations, but at the end of the day, we were all there trying to make a difference for the environment and for food security, right? That's always been a main passion and motivation of mine. So to find a community and to find a home with that is pretty tremendous. And I was not expecting that to the level that it actually happened. And then also to be put in front of people that I could talk about the company, right? I didn't expect that I would be pitching as much as I did. You are constantly talking about your business. And while you're doing it, it's intimidating. You're going up in front of like big names from all these huge companies. But by the end of the program, you look back and you're almost unrecognizable from where you started, and you might not have realized that going into it. So I started off as a scientist and really quickly shed that mentality of strict scientists and kind of was walking into the light as an entrepreneur, which has its own set of challenges. But it was a really big transition for me personally, and I wasn't expecting that personal transformation to happen as quickly as it did, but it all for the better.
Okay, nice. Heidi, what about you?
Yeah, Similar to Suzanne, wasn't quite sure what to expect because I mean, we weren't actually looking to join an accelerator. Someone from the university just said, "Oh, by the way, Karsten's in town. You should talk to him." And what I thought was just a meeting to see what's going on turned into this interview and said, "Okay, you look good." So we didn't really. And the other thing in my naive brain was thinking, well, an accelerator means working on your pitch deck, your financial spreadsheets, and standard business practices, business planning stuff. But that's not. I mean, you'll of course have that component if you need it. But really, it's getting the market intelligence, talking to the end users. I mean, and right away, those connections are made for you. So that's just like, wow, this is exactly what we needed, because we thought we have the greatest solution, but let's see if the people who are going to buy it agree, and getting that answer, or thinking we're getting that answer, or working towards an answer, it happens right at the beginning for us. It did. And that was brilliant. I mean, that's exactly what we needed to jumpstart us actually talking about selling product and making sure it meets the specs of the end user. I mean, that was fabulous. And the other thing was just, like pricing. We really wanted to know what our competitive pricing was. And so we were, as we traveled the world, our cohort went Hawaii, Norway, Singapore, but then we were talking to people in Indonesia, Malaysia, and elsewhere, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, well, we can buy it for this much," and this is the problems with the competitive product. So it was brilliant.
Okay. What about you, Jason? Your expectations initially versus maybe the experience, good, bad, or indifferent, that you got out of it.
I'm trying to remember, because it was all COVID and life was crazy, but I think we applied before COVID, and then we got accepted, and we knew beforehand the whole program was going to be virtual. But there's this element of oh wow, travel the world. So that didn't happen. But I mean, we still are connected with Hatch, and I'm in Norway now, and I saw some Hatch crew 2 days ago. We were in Singapore last November, hanging out with the Hatch crew there, and so really they still added a tremendous amount of value. My experience of Hatch personally was I didn't realize how much talking to people there was going to be, right? Like so many calls and so many follow-ups. And I mean, it's important because that's how you build a business, right? You have to find the people to talk to, get in the room, and that's what Hatch is really good at. So I maybe didn't expect that as much, but it's what we needed. There's also accountability, which I didn't expect, which is also good. There was a weekly, every week we had to write a report to Hatch to summarize what we were working on. And some weeks we're like, oh, we got to get that report in before Friday, right? And I mean, but that was also a good thing. So I'm essentially saying the program can be hard and intensive, but it's worthwhile, and it's very intentionally created. I don't know what they have in store for Hatch 5.0 compared to when we were there in 2020, but they're definitely iterating and improving on it. So whatever it is, it's going to be good.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into, 5.0 has iterated and changed, based on the feedback from everybody over the course of the last 5 years. Some of you online here are thinking, going, 3 months traveling all over the world. I haven't got the time for that. I've got a business to run. Totally get it. So this time we've changed it around so that, we've got about 30% of the time is on site in a location with dedicated business sessions and specific exposure to that region. 50% is hybrid and online, so people have more time to work on what they've picked up from each of the locations, but also can work from home and their staff and so forth, and then there's some time off in between. So it's important that we're able to kind of take the feedback from you guys and move on, and maybe just a little bit about the actual program itself. For those listening in, that experience of every team that joins this program, for me, has different needs, and has different priorities and so forth, and and as much as we possibly can, we try and create an individual experience for each team. So maybe just walkthrough in terms of some of the highlights of the program, or locations and things that you saw, people that you met, or key learnings that you took from the experience, for each of your programs that you attended. Suzanne, maybe go ahead again. You're good.
Sure. I'm jealous that you guys get time off for the 5.0.
Well,
I was in
I
the
don't,
second
no,
cohort.
that was a slight mistake. Yeah, there's no time off.
Okay. I was gonna say, we didn't get any time off, Wayne. No, but yeah, so our program was pretty intense. We started off in Cork, Ireland, where Wayne is right now, and we spent about, I would say, 40 days there. And that was really great because we were kind of in a room together all the time. We were eating together, and like listening to presentations together. And even though we were a diverse group of companies, there was still so much for each of us to kind of pay attention to and chew on throughout the day. Almost a little bit too much, right, for an individual company, that some presenters or speakers might not be necessarily relevant to you. And then it became your job to manage your time and understand, well, actually, I'm going to not attend that session necessarily because I need to be doing this. And so that became a time management exercise for us to understand what was relevant to us. You have advice coming from all different places: feed distributors, manufacturers, farmers themselves, other entrepreneurs that are in a completely different space. So understanding what was valuable to you and where you could extract the most meaning from the program, that was a learning curve in itself, especially since we were very intensive when we were in Ireland. And then we went on to Norway. We spent about 2.5 weeks in Norway, and that was awesome. We got to see, well, awesome for a lot of people. I spent most of the time in a makerspace building prototypes. I think about 15 to 16 hours a day. We were soldering and building out our first prototype because we knew in about 2 weeks' time we would be headed to Indonesia. But Norway was really remarkable to understand what it meant when aquaculture was part of a society or a culture, right? Bergen really was all about salmon, and we got to visit cages and meet the farmers there. Coming from the US, I had no aquaculture experience. I didn't really understand what aquaculture meant and what the practices of farming were and what they meant to families that had been doing it for generations. So really started to understand the aqua farmer. That was incredible in Norway. And in Singapore, we went to Singapore and understood the financing, right? That's kind of where the money was for us, and talking to big name investors, and how do you speak to your product in a meaningful way that investors are not going to get bored or walk away, or just, I think, learning to talk to an investor is an art in itself, right? And so that was really something that we got a taste of in Singapore. So all those different regions, super intensive. You're talking to a bunch of different people, and then really trying to extract what's meaningful to yourself throughout the whole process. And again, though, for me, the biggest experience was dropping our prototype in a farm in Indonesia. I had built it, we were building it in isolation. And even though the prototype didn't work, it completely reshaped how we were gonna get down for 2.0. I mean, we were totally off the mark with the first prototype. It wasn't until we had that real world experience of putting it on in an actual shrimp pond that I was like, oh, wow, like we got to totally rethink this, right? And that to me was one of the more meaningful experiences as well.
Yeah, and the same question to you, Jason. Your individual experience throughout, and now maybe how it's impacting you in terms of, you're based in Norway now for the last while, and in the home of salmon, and what within that program has kind of enabled you to walk and talk with what is a very mature aquaculture ecosystem with some very demanding potential customers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're really wanting to understand your question, how the Hatch program specifically helped us to get us to this point. Yeah. I mean, coming from knowing nothing about aquaculture to landing a partner, and now getting funding from a Norwegian accelerator, and now moving to Norway, where salmon is the biggest thing in the world. I mean, that was Hatch. I mean, obviously we're running our company, but Hatch had a lot of influence there with introductions. So, I mean, going through the program, I don't remember if Suzanne or Heidi said it, but it is overwhelming. There was so much content, and then trying to understand what's relevant and not, and then, you know, rapidly taking notes and digesting it. But then the follow-up and realizing that the introductions being provided are big names, right? I'll be honest, I've never heard of Cargill before I was part of Hatch. And you mean, like, Cargill is just massive, right? And here I am in a call with Cargill, you know, completely ignorant to what's actually happening, right? So it's really, I know, being willing to fail and, you know, being willing to be the fool, and people will help you along, and that's what Hatch is there for, right? So for me personally, it gave a level of confidence, definitely a lot of humility, right? And I think that's needed. You know, you can't enter into a new market and assume you know everything. But having the support and, you know, the mentors, and I text a number of the Hatch team as needed, right? And we jump on calls as needed, and they're still here for us. So it's a longer term relationship, and that's what you want when you accept funding or from any investor, or, you know, going into any market, right? So yeah, it was great.
Okay, and the same thing for you, Heidi, in terms of, you know, what you kind of extracted from it and how it positioned you to where you are now, right? I mean, you've I see some questions coming in about, you know, raising money and so forth. We'll get to that in a second, but, you know, how to get you from a really smart technology firm with an amazing product, you know, into commercializing that and getting it to the market, and you know, raising and attracting investment, you know, throughout the process of the program. What do you take from that process in terms of getting you to where you are today?
Yeah, the list would be very long in answering it, but I'll just maybe say a few things that haven't been said yet. For us, so we have a microalgae ingredient, and we want it to go into fish food. So going to Norway, Singapore, and the tours that were offered, and I'm in Hawaii, so I already had that information. Understanding really from the end users again, is there a place for our product, and why would they switch over to our product? Why would they switch from a competitor product to ours? So just being on the ground, boots on the ground, where they're going to use my product was terrific, because Hatch made those introductions and took all of us in the cohort to these places anyway, so we could talk to these people who are dealing with fish feed ingredients. But also we were interested in eventually building our own factory. And in those places we were at, understanding labor laws or corporate laws. And we went in Norway, we went to a lawyer's office and had the lowdown of setting up a business in Norway and everything it entails. And, you know, we're American, we don't know what the European or Norwegian labor laws are. So that was a real eye opener, and it was something I didn't anticipate I needed to know at this point. But now, as we're really deciding on where our company is going in terms of setting up production outside of Hawaii, how do we make those decisions? And so we've already had some of the basis for guiding us through this participation in the accelerator. A second thing that I don't think was, a little bit hinted at, but the colleagues in your cohort, the amount I learned from my colleagues was totally unexpected. I mean, we had people there were other people who happened to be doing fish feed ingredients. So they knew all the downstream as engineers, and we're biologists. We didn't know those things. And so just having the ability to interact with my colleagues who had gone through this and knew exactly what our product limitations were, having those discussions with those colleagues was really great. So I don't know how you put your cohort together, but it was just so complimentary to us. And of course, seeing other women CEO and technical people doing all these cool like AI stuff. And I mean, just so the diversity of the group, in terms of profiling, and then also their experience in business and technology, that just together was great. And you know, to this day, we just get a big smile every time somebody reaches out from our cohort. I mean, these are lifelong friendships.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying it's not by accident that we pull these cohorts together, and you know, we need to obviously try and maximize the synergy between, you know, cohort participants. And you're right, Heidi, there's a huge amount to learn from that. And you know, part of this kind of for me, it's like a conveyor belt. You know, you're the product, you're on the conveyor belt, and you know, we're adding bits and pieces to make you, you know, adding the meat on the bones and adding new ingredients. And you know, a really important part of the process are the people that you meet throughout the program, and these mentors, you know, who we invite to come and talk to you, and you know, they come free, you know, of their time because they really are excited about the new technologies coming through our sector, and they're very passionate about it. Maybe Suzan, if you could talk to that in terms of the kind of people that you met, the kind of mentors, the range of mentors that you experience, and just how those mentor sessions are, what they meant for you and how they were set up, and the experience of it, because that is where a lot of the learning comes from, right?
Yeah, and I think, you know, we talk a lot about how the businesses, how our products improve through communicating with those type of people. But for me, it was also a tremendous amount of emotional support, right? What we do is not easy. You know, Heidi gave up a tenure track. You know, Jason and I are academic renegades. We left academia, which is the normal track that you would take when you get a PhD, to kind of join this Wild West environment of entrepreneurship, which is really, really tough, right? You're having to learn things. You're constantly putting out fires. You're having to hold that true passion and motivation inside you constantly. And there is, of course, self-doubt and just, you know, am I doing this right? Am I in the right place? And having a community and the cohort around you, like Heidi described, really does help you. You see other people in a similar situation. You learn from them, and you learn, you know, they have families or you have a family, and we're all working towards something much bigger. And that's almost intangible when you know, I don't think they can really write that in a promo for the accelerator, but that's something that definitely happens naturally. And when you get in those one-on-one sessions with your mentor, that's part of the conversation, right? You want to know more about your market. You want to know more about the problem. You want your pitch deck to be beautiful. But at the end of the day, that all of that stuff doesn't matter if you're not internally motivated to truly solve the problem in aquaculture. And I think being surrounded by people that Heidi mentioned, they become your family in a way for that time period. And Wayne, I can't tell you how many times I've called Wayne and been like, Wayne, I just want to hear your voice, right? I just need to hear your voice and just get that motivation that you give me. That's been huge. So aside from all the parts that they put on us, they're also kind of filling up your heart to stay motivated. And I think that's really was a big part of Hatch for me, going through the program.
Yeah, and it's always interesting for me, everybody takes something different, right? I mean, I remember you, Jason, you were super preparing for sessions, and you know, your weekly reports, as you mentioned, you were probably the most diligent of everyone. You got all my stars. But you know,
Awesome.
But just in terms of, you know, that interaction with these you know, subject matter experts, I mean, but there's a variety of different types, right? You know, not maybe all relevant to you. And you know, how did you kind of find that experience and the benefit that it had to you and your company, even those that weren't specific to the, you know, the specific problem that you're trying to solve?
Well, yeah, definitely the ones that were related to, you know, harmful algal blooms, and we were looking specifically at salmon. You know, we're hyper focused on that and making sure we know what's going on. But I think just being aware of the other problems in the market within aquaculture, you know, at a very high level is just good to know, right? And now that we have been at it for a number of years, we're starting to kind of put those puzzle pieces together with, you know, we got that 101 of shrimp, whatever it is. And now, you know, I went back to Singapore last year, and then I'm like, oh, I remember Hatch had something on this and it was important. And now I'm going to ask a few more questions and really dig deeper here, right? And it's like, okay, that's what they meant. So I think just talking about the whole cohort, I think one thing, us being fully virtual, we missed out on, building that camaraderie and, that, really deep friendship. And that's just the nature of the whole world went online. And, Blue Lion and we've been in part of virtual incubators through outside of Hatch as well during the pandemic and also in person. And even going to Singapore for 2 weeks and spending time with Wayne and Ben, just, on a boat ride or at dinner, right? There's an intangible thing that forms a bond that you couldn't get online. So I think there's a value that online facilitates where you can simulate information, but then you hang up and you're in your living room, or it's different. So I think it's good because it opens opportunity for people who can't always travel as much. But I think the in-person is imperative, right? And it's really how you build a trusting, long-lasting relationship. It can be done virtually, but it comes naturally if you just are standing with someone in line waiting for a bus and you're like, wow, look at that mountain, or, do you want a beer, or whatever it is, right? It's just the little things that you get to know people's personalities and really what they care about. So yeah, I would encourage you. I think there's benefits to both. And I think it sounds like Hatch is leveraging that. So that's good.
And to you, Heidi, your experience of yourself and your husband are building this business, and you traveled all over and just exposed to different cultures, right? In different regions. I see some questions coming up about, is Singapore the best country to get investment in, or Norway? Like, they're completely different cultures and approaches to investing, for example, but also in terms of the range of mentors that you would have been exposed to in each of those regions, right? Southeast Asia is a completely different, environment and different species and different type of aquaculture versus Norway. So maybe a little bit on that in terms of that diversity that you experienced.
Yeah, and because in the back of our mind, we're always looking at, like, where are we going to be running our factory? We wanted to be close to aquaculture. Norway and Singapore each could be using our products. I mean, those are just the two countries where we went to, but being there on the ground was really important to understand to get a feeling for what we're doing, which is a very, biological. We have to grow large volumes of microalgae in fermentation systems, and we need people who are trained in, like in Ireland, trained in fermentation technology. And it can be beer, for example, but they need to grow, they have the training of the universities there to give us the people we can hire who can run fermentation facility but understand algae. So getting are the right people who can work for us there in that region, Norway, Singapore, wherever. And then, banking, how is banking done, the labor laws I mentioned. So being on the ground was really, really important, because we went to those universities, like in Singapore, we went to the several academic institutions and saw their facilities, talked to their students and their professors. And that really helped us get a feel of, can we operate here for our needs, or would phase 1 be here and then in phase 2 be somewhere else? So having that in person, can we communicate in person? It's all, you can read a standard operating procedure, but can you actually, do you speak the same language enough to be able to meet your end goal, which is just producing this microalgae ingredient for fish feed? I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's just obviously access to, different regions have different kind of specialities, right? And, the fact that we're able to tap into it. Now, I don't want this to be, Hatch is great kind of flag waving kind of exercise here. And, ultimately this is all about business, right? And people here are, joining who are, pretty determined entrepreneurs. They want to grow the business, scale the business, and they're looking to evaluate whether this type of program could be of value to them and take them to the next stage. And one of the most important parts of that is, increasing the value of your organization through investment and finding customers. And maybe there are 1 or 2 questions coming up in relation to that, but just for your, experience and kind of for you to share about, the investor ready journey for each of your organizations in terms of, where it started and where it finished, and the key things that you found that you needed to address following, the experience of the program. If you could highlight one or two of those, but ultimately where you are now, the size of your team, the kind of customers you're talking to now, kind of just kicking out of the program. What does that look like for each of you? And Suzanne, we'll kick off with you again.
Yeah, I think that at some point after the accelerator, you kind of go through it, and for me personally, or for Minnowtech, we were leaning on Hatch and really saw you guys as the experts. But at some point, the script flips, and I know way more about my product and my market and my customers than you guys do. And now I'm telling you more what I need than you telling me what I need. So that understanding when that transition happens is important. And I think for Minnowtech, the taking on our first customers, we have our fully commercialized product. We too have a strategic partnership with OTEC based in Scotland. We also have NSF funding from the United States. So that's always a great channel for funding, a non-dilutive funding. We have a phase 1, we have a phase 2. We do have a big presence in Kauai. We just recently we have gotten matching funds from Hawaii, and we're also getting matching funds for the phase 2. So if you're a US based company, there's lots of opportunity for grants to come in if you're innovating with technology. We also have investment from our strategic partner, in-kind investment, where we fully commercialized our product. Last year, we did our official product launch, and we had customers from all over the world reaching out to us, shrimp farmers, asking to trial our product. At this stage, we're 7 people, but we're in 4 corners of the world. And we're putting our product through the ringer. We're trying to see the extent of what it can perform, where it breaks, where we do the best, and then really going deep into Ecuador and setting up a fortress, if you will, in Ecuador, because we've identified that as our main target market. So Minnowtech now is leaning in on sales. We're trying, we have inventory that we're building up, and we're trying to push our product throughout different farmers in a particular region, while also having our foot in the water in different places to understand when our product breaks and how do we make it better consistently. I would say that for us, our biggest thing is that we need to live with the customer. I think as a technology company, it's really easy for us to develop things that we think are cool, but at the end of the day, if our customer doesn't want it, we're not going to build it. And so really understanding what the pain points and what the farmer needs, that's really what we're on a mission to understand now as we grow in Ecuador and different regions of the world. And we'll likely be going up for our Series A as we scale. Now we're in a scaling problem, right? How do we go from 4 farms to 100 farms? How do we go from 100 devices to 10,000 devices? That takes a lot of careful planning, a lot of failure, and a lot of understanding of your customer and the customer profile. So that's what Minnowtech is focused on at the moment.
Nice. Heidi, what about you?
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on that and answer one of these questions from my point of view that was coming through the chat here. So the ongoing support after the program, that we didn't expect it, but we received continued support after our graduation from the accelerator. And that was absolutely critical because we were trying to do a Series A fundraise. And we were successful in doing our Series A year ago. Hatch was provided so much support for us to get to that. And we didn't have to pay anything, but they have, I don't know if that's still your model, but you had equity in our company by us joining the accelerator. So it's in your interest to have a successful. So we really leaned on that input a lot. And it was really through Hatch that we made the introductions to the lead investor during our accelerator. On our own, we went off and met with a variety of investors while we were over in Europe. And so that was absolutely critical, and that continued support even to this day. I mean, it's like Suzanne said, now you're much more independent, but just to know that support is there if you need it, if for whatever reason, it's great to have that. And then Suzanne said a different thing, about scaling. Yeah, and just one, I guess it was something that we learned after graduation, is that you should always raise more money than you think you need and give yourself more time if you're trying to scale something, because you think you have the perfect plan, Suzanne, but you got to give yourself more time.
Very true, very true. Wise words, Heidi. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick because I know we're running on time. Regarding investment, before Hatch, we participated in some pitch competitions, raising some funds here and there. Hatch obviously invested in us through the Hatch. Like I mentioned, we found a Scottish strategic partner, OTAC, and they gave us a strategic investment. We used that to leverage a lot of non-dilutive funding in Canada. So I know there's some Canadians on the call here. Canada is a great source of non-dilutive funding, and happy to provide more details one-on-one on the as needed. When we entered the Hatch program, we were 3. It was myself, my co-founder Katie, and we had just brought on an engineer. Now we're 7 people. So it's myself, Katie, we have a chief commercial officer, we have a biology team and an engineering team. Katie and I are in Norway right now with our families. And then in Canada, we have 3 people in Waterloo, Ontario, 1 in Halifax, and 1 in Victoria. So we span the entire coast to coast in Canada. So we're a very work from home / virtual company. We're currently launching beta tests in the coming months on salmon farms, and we're working towards a seed round later this year. So I'm happy to entertain more conversations around that, but I know most people on this call aren't probably investors. So, but leverage a lot of funding.
Thanks, Jason. And maybe the 45-minute discussion flies as always. Maybe what I'll do is just get into a couple of questions for the panel. Chris, you're very good at asking questions. And the interesting one for me, I guess, for the panel is what for each of you were the 2 best experiences or learning points from each separate location? And what did you think the differences were between each of those locations that the future participants would look to be able to experience? Heidi, maybe we'll kick off with you from that, if that.
Yeah, I think I might have touched on that already.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not one's not better than the other. I mean, I'm not sure why you're asking the question, but you really should go to each of those locations. Yeah, we had to pay for, I believe we paid for our hotel and food and stuff, but that's really good experience because then you learn so much about the region, finding the cheapest deals. I think we paid our own airfare too, but you gotta do that. But then when you're there, it's all worth it because you have to be on, like Jason was saying, being in person really is a different thing. So I'm not sure what you can't, in my mind, you can't. No, they're not, one is better than the other.
Okay. What about you, Suzanne?
Yeah, I think for me, in each location, visiting the actual farms were the best experience. I mean, in Ireland, we went and saw an oyster farm, and in Norway, we were on a salmon farm, and in Indonesia, we were on a shrimp farm. Understanding that everybody's growing these aquatic animals and doing it in different ways all over the world, and how big and meaningful the industry actually is. That was definitely my favorite part, the real world experiences of interacting with our soon to be customers.
Yeah, I think that's actually probably one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from 37 participants we've had, is that global experience of being on site, on farms, talking to the farmers, and then working your technology back, right, and how you can apply your product to the market is a key part of that learning. What about you, Jason? You've been in Singapore. Yours is probably a lot fresher. You've been in Singapore. We met you just before Christmas, and now you're in Norway. You haven't been to Hawaii, as far as I remember.
No, fortunately not for business or personal, but still a place to go. Well, I can speak to the fact that the good thing about being a virtual throughout the pandemic was it opened up the world. It became normal to email someone and get on a call And that is convenient for sure, right? Like you don't have to leave your home and you can talk to anyone in the world. I would also say traveling to these different locations is a must, just to understand the culture. I still kind of laugh at Wayne telling me how to give out business cards in Singapore, right? And I wouldn't have known that, right? So just those little tiny things that could be big things. And yeah, Norwegians have their culture and the way of communicating and priorities of mannerisms, and it's good to know, right? And it really helps doing proper business and to respect others in the way they act. So
yeah. Okay, I think just maybe kind of running towards the end, Chris, again, your question, and you know, Heidi, you just mentioned it. How does ongoing support work after the program? Is there a fee or charge to that? No, there's no fee. You know, we have a vested interest in your success, you know, and we understand very clearly that, you know, it's not just that 14-week period where we kind of put you in a schedule and, you know, we put all these, introduce you to a whole load of people. You know, that's really, guys, at the end of it is only where the work really starts, in my opinion, and in our experience. And, you know, we're on a journey together, and, you know, the more successful you are, the more successful we are. And that's how we view it. And, you know, introducing you to the right connections, networks, people who can, you know, take your business further, and all the inputs that we have in our back pocket to give to you. I think that's the we're all in all the time. There's a bit more of a technical question, and maybe Heidi, this could be a good one for you. You know, for your IP development, how did you decide whether to apply for patents or maintain your tools and technologies as trade secrets? You know, we do have Dr. Claude Kaplan, who is a key part of the Hatch team, and he has a background in IP and guiding people through that. But, you know, all of you have developed technologies, right? And maybe just very quickly on that before we kind of start to wrap up.
Yeah, so having a patent or issued patent opens doors. It's when you're speaking to world leaders selling bioproducts, you know, into food and fish feed ingredients. Having a patent really helped us because it showed that we have something that's different, distinguishes us from the competition. Yeah, so if you are technology based and you have innovation, discovery, that's non-obvious, you file a patent, but you have to teach in the patent how you do it. And you has to be, you know, that's an obligation, it's a legal obligation that you teach it. Of course, everybody has, after they file a patent, get patent issues, you should be always making improvements to your process. And a lot of it's, how do you keep it trade secret or not? You need to assess that on where you are, what is the risk of someone making those same improvements and filing for it. That has happened to us before, where we didn't realize we had this one loophole that someone could get a different patent. Of course, ours is dominant, but you don't even want to be there. You don't want to. So you'll develop trade secrets. You'll have trade secrets, but you have to make sure that your patent actually teaches what you're doing. And if it is really good and innovative technology, your patent's going to be very strong. So even if you're teaching someone in the regions of the world that we're active in, that it has a lot of value, and we can track if someone's infringing. So yeah, it depends on your situation, but yeah, you do both. Okay.
Maybe just there's another question here around, you know, the program itself and traveling, the costs. On hatch.blue/accelerator, if you pop in there, you'll see quite a detailed FAQ for everybody. That I think will answer a lot of the kind of typical questions that we would expect for you to have in relation to the costs of the program in terms of travel, how all that works. Essentially, we structure everything from the start to the end in terms of where you're going to be, where you need to be, and getting you to and from there. You know, in terms of flights from each of the different locations, we will pay for one member of your team to go to Hawaii, to go to Norway, to go to Singapore. The rest is on you. A lot of the internal travel in Asia, you know, we will cover the cost of that in terms of, you know, in this case, between Singapore and Vietnam and the hotels and so forth. We take care of that. But I think all the answers to those questions will be in that FAQ. Let me see. One other question: have you found previous cohort alumni easy to partner with directly? I think you can see these guys are from 3 different cohorts. You know, they've all connected. We encourage that, and of course, you know, they're in different parts of the world, and it's easy to pick up the phone and say, hey, Suzanne, tell me what's happening with algae blooms down in Ecuador, if there are such things, right? And that's essentially how it works. And, you know, regular engagement with the Hatch team, I think, can put and connect you with teams that are, you know, in certain locations, and that may have already gone through processes, be it grants, be it, you know, setting up a business, or whatever the case may be. There's probably very little that we can't put you in touch with and give you, you know, concrete positive information in support of what you're trying to do. I think that's probably a wrap. Is Singapore the best country to get funding, or is it Norway? I think very different, and the guys will contest to this. You know, different cultures have different approaches to investing, depending on what you're producing. But I think it's fair to say throughout the whole process, you will learn to get investor ready. You will know how to talk to your potential investor audience. We have a lot of experience in that, and you know, Heidi, Jason, and Suzanne, and all the other teams have raised in excess of $100 million so far, you know, kicking out of the program. So, you know, there is a lot of learning in that that we can share. But, you know, just in concluding, I'd really like to thank everybody for joining here this evening. I hope listening to the participants and where they are today, you know, what they got from it, the value, you know, how they perceived spending their time on this program and what they got out of it, and how that's positioned them where they are today, it was a value to you. And maybe you're able to put yourself in maybe their shoes into the future in terms of your decision on applying to the program and fully committing to it, because, you know, it's not just easy getting on the program. It's when you get there is what you do with it. And we don't spoon feed you. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but the ones that are most successful are the ones that really take the opportunity by the horns and run with it. And we won't be left wanting in terms of the support that we're looking to offer to the teams that we hope to build a future success together with. So just in conclusion, Suzanne, muchas gracias. Thank you.
De nada.
Heidi, it's a mahalo. And Jason, I don't know what the Norwegian equivalent is yet, but tak is
tak. Yeah, it's tak.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for contributing this evening. You know, hopefully it sheds some light for those watching on maybe the next stage of their opportunity. And thank you for everybody for joining.
Good luck, everyone.
Everyone.
Yep, good luck, everyone. Yep.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Sláinte.